Welcome to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring the random prompts of Daniel Rosehill as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters. Join us for deep dives into AI, technology, and whatever other random thing Daniel finds fascinating today. Subscribe on Spotify or your favorite podcatcher. Now, today's episode.
My Weird Prompts is an AI-generated podcast produced by Daniel Rosehill, a verified human with documentation to prove it. While every effort is made to ensure our AI hosts draw from credible sources and run on cutting-edge models, they do occasionally make things up with alarming confidence. As with everything in life, and especially this podcast, treat all claims as spurious until confirmed to be not. Daniel, Herman and Corn accept no responsibility for any decisions made based on the confident ramblings of our artificial presenters. Now, today's episode.
Hey Herman and Corn, I have a question regarding something that doesn't receive a lot of attention, and that is power quality. There's a storm system that's moving towards Israel at the moment, and it's expected to reach here about tomorrow. There's going to be, according to media reports, very, very strong winds, and that probably means the power is going to drop. And this makes me worry just a little bit because I took out my UPS last week. I've been using desktop computers for a number of years, even though they're kind of old school at this stage. But I really appreciate the power of a desktop for reliability and being able to upgrade the hardware and being able to do stuff now with AI because I have a dedicated GPU. The desktop is kind of the most expensive thing that I own, and it's also something that I rely on every day for work. So if we ever were to be zapped by power, that would be a pretty heavy blow. So like a lot of desktop owners, I've owned a UPS, the one that I mentioned getting rid of last week. The reason that I got rid of it was because I didn't change out my UPS after upgrading my computer, which I did about 2 years ago, and I assumed my existing UPS would be just fine. It turns out that the GPU freezes I was having, in which my computer would seize up about every 30 minutes. Using AI, I was actually able to diagnose the cause of that. It was nothing to do with the GPU driver or software. It was actually the UPS being undersized for my computer and causing a power constraint whenever the GPU was trying to work. That was cutting out. So I got rid of the UPS. I haven't bought a new one because UPSs can get a bit expensive as you get into more expensive hardware. And I thought that before I just jump out and buy whatever it is I need, it would be worth pausing for a second to think why I want a UPS. The main reason that I see people recommending UPSs for desktop is that because, unlike laptops, you don't have a built-in battery, the second that the power drops, your computer drops and it's going to turn off. So if you're in the middle of working on a document or something like that, you don't want that to happen. So UPS gives you a little bit of a reserve that firstly you can weather those temporary power interruptions without even knowing that they happen. And if you do happen to be working on something very important, you know that you've always got a 15-minute window to turn off your computer. The thing is, that's actually not the reason that I wanted to buy a UPS or that I've always liked having one. We don't have power cuts that frequently, but they do happen quite 3 or 4 times over the course of a winter, maybe a bit more than that. And when the power goes out, I kind of feel like it's a sign maybe from the heavens to take a break from what you're doing and go and watch the lightning. And it's never that big a deal. Most of what I do is in the cloud. But what I've always assumed is that UPSs offer some degree of power conditioning, which is that they sit between the electricity socket and your computer, and they do a little bit of power normalization and prevent those little spikes in electricity that we don't know happen, but do happen at a crazy regularity. The thing that worries me much more than occasionally losing power and a hard shutdown on the computer is actually when the power is restored. Frequently, where I live, when the power comes back, there's 3 or 4 kind of false starts where they're trying to get the power back. And that actually, sometimes when I think about those power surge events that might, if they make it down the line into your device, are going to really, mess up your computer or total your fridge. That's kind of what I think is going to really be the bigger issue. My wife and I are also renting, and we've been renting for a number of years. And the electricity in rentals is frequently kind of imperfect in the sense that you can sense the wiring isn't great and maybe they have a couple of malfunctions, but you also can't really do much to replace it. If you talk about power conditioning and power quality, and we think about, well, the use for me is both that and assuming that we're going to get some kind of surge protection. If you have a lightning strike that's going to hit really nearby your building, there's probably nothing that you can do which is going to offer you meaningful power protection. So the safety net that I'm looking for is a bit less dramatic than that. It's what can you add between your computer and the wall, especially as someone who doesn't own the electricity network and wherever you're renting, but you've got some expensive hardware and you want something that's going to give you the best chance possible of surviving less dramatic surges than a direct lightning strike, but the kind that you might credibly encounter, especially over the course of a winter where you might have some environmental factors that are interrupting or causing deviations from your usually very reliable power supply. Love to get your thoughts.
Welcome to My Weird Prompts, the podcast where an AI and a human, well, two AIs and a human, try to make sense of the universe, one strange idea at a time. I'm Corn, and with me, as always, is the endlessly insightful Herman.
And I'm Herman. Today's topic, submitted by our very own producer, Daniel Rosehill, delves into something far more critical than most people realize, the silent, often invisible world of power quality.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Herman, when Daniel first sent this prompt in, I immediately thought of just, power outages. Like, the lights go out, your computer dies, you lose your work. But reading through his thoughts, it's so much more nuanced than that.
Precisely, Corn. The immediate, dramatic interruption of a power outage is what captures attention, but the insidious long-term degradation caused by poor power quality, voltage fluctuations, and surges particularly during power restoration is arguably more damaging to sensitive electronics. It's the silent killer of your tech.
Silent killer of your tech. Herman, that's a bit dramatic, even for you. I mean, my old desktop has survived plenty of flickers and surges over the years. Are we really talking about widespread destruction here?
Well, hold on, Corn, that's not quite right. While a single flicker might not fry your motherboard, repeated stress from undervoltage conditions, overvoltage spikes, or general noisy power can absolutely shorten the lifespan of components, especially power supplies and storage drives. Think of it like constantly driving your car on poorly paved roads. You might not break an axle every time, but the suspension and tires will wear out much faster.
Okay, I get the analogy. But let's rewind a bit to Daniel's specific problem. He mentioned he got rid of his old UPS because it was undersized and causing his GPU to freeze up. That's fascinating, right? An AI actually diagnosed it.
Indeed. It highlights how complex these systems are. A UPS, or uninterruptible power supply, serves two primary functions, providing temporary backup power during an outage, and often offering surge protection. However, a crucial detail many overlook, as Daniel discovered, is proper sizing. An undersized UPS can actually starve your components of power, especially during peak load, like when a powerful GPU kicks in. This isn't just inefficient, it's detrimental.
So, it's not just about having a UPS, it's about having the Reichka UPS. And he was getting these freezes even though he thought his existing UPS would be fine after a computer upgrade. That really speaks to how power demands can change without you even realizing it. My mind immediately goes to people trying to run their fancy new gaming rigs on ancient power strips.
Power strips. A common misconception, Corn. Most basic power strips are just glorified extension cords with a rudimentary circuit breaker. They offer minimal, if any, effective surge suppression and certainly no power conditioning. They are not a substitute for a quality UPS or dedicated surge protector.
But wait, I thought a surge protector was good enough for surges? That's what I always thought. You plug your expensive TV into one of those, and if lightning strikes, you're golden, right?
Not entirely. While a good surge protector can sacrifice itself to protect against a large, single event, like a direct lightning strike, though even then, nothing is guaranteed for a direct hit. It does very little for the constant, smaller fluctuations that happen daily. These include sags, momentary drops in voltage, brownouts, prolonged sags, and line noise, which can be caused by everything from your refrigerator cycling onto industrial equipment on the same grid. This is where the concept of power conditioning comes into play.
Power conditioning. So that's the real hero here, beyond just backup power, huh? Daniel was talking about wanting something that would sit between his computer and the wall, normalizing the power.
Precisely. Power conditioning smooths out these irregularities, providing a clean, stable power signal to your devices. There are different types of UPS units that offer varying degrees of conditioning. And offline or standby, UPS provides basic surge protection and switches to battery power during outages. Align Interactive. UPS offers more advanced voltage regulation, correcting minor fluctuations without switching to battery. And then, the online or double conversion. UPS provides the highest level of protection, constantly converting incoming AC to DC and back to AC, completely isolating your devices from the grid's imperfections. This is the gold standard for truly sensitive equipment.
Okay, now that sounds like what Daniel's after, especially living in a rental. He mentioned that rental property wiring can be imperfect. I've definitely lived in places where plugging in a hairdryer would make the lights dim in the other room. Is that related to power quality issues?
Absolutely. Older wiring, shared circuits, inadequate grounding. These are all common issues in rental properties or older homes that directly contribute to poor power quality. You're not just dealing with the external grid, you're dealing with your internal wiring, which can act as an amplifier or a filter, for better or worse. An imperfect internal electrical system makes devices more vulnerable to external grid issues.
So, if your wiring is sketchy, you're getting a double whammy of bad power from the outside and bad power from the inside. That's a grim thought.
It can be, yes. And it's why proper power protection becomes even more critical for those with significant investments in their home office or entertainment systems, especially if they can't directly upgrade or replace their building's electrical infrastructure.
Let's take a quick break from our sponsors.
Are you tired of feeling like your vital life force is constantly being drained by unseen forces? Do you wake up feeling less than optimally optimized? Introducing the ChakraSync Energy Harmonizer Disc. This revolutionary, palm-sized bioresonant disc utilizes proprietary crystalline matrix technology to gently realign your personal electromagnetic field, instantly boosting your vitality. Simply place it under your pillow, on your desk, or even tape it to your pet. Users report feeling more in sync, strangely calm, and less bothered by the sound of crickets at night. The ChakraSync Energy Harmonizer Disc, because your aura deserves a tune-up. Buy now.
Right. Thanks, Larry. Anyway, back to power quality. Corn, you brought up a really important point about rental properties. Daniel specifically mentioned the surges that happen when power is restored. That's where I think the biggest immediate threat lies.
Yeah, I've noticed that myself. The power goes out, it comes back on, then maybe flickers a couple more times before it stabilizes. It's like the grid is having a little seizure. Why does that happen, Herman?
It's a complex interplay. When a power outage occurs, it's often due to a fault, like a tree branch hitting a line. Utility companies will attempt to restore power, sometimes incrementally, or by trying different feeders. Each attempt can cause what's called a recloser event, essentially. The system tries to re-energize the line, but if the fault is still present, it trips again. This creates those rapid on-off cycles, each accompanied by a significant voltage fluctuation or surge as the grid tries to stabilize.
So, those aren't just annoying flickers. They're mini power attacks on your computer?
Precisely. And often these surges upon restoration can be far more damaging than the initial outage itself. Your devices are trying to power up, drawing maximum current, and then they're hit with unstable voltage. That's a recipe for disaster for sensitive internal components.
So, an online UPS, like you mentioned, would essentially act as a constant buffer, protecting against those startup surges too.
That's the ideal. An online UPS provides continuous conditioned power regardless of the input. It means your devices aren't directly exposed to those power restoration surges at all, because they're always running off the UPS's internal inverter. It's a much more robust form of protection than just a line interactive or standby model.
Okay, but what about really big events? Like, Daniel specifically said if lightning hits really nearby your building, there's probably nothing you can do. Is that true? Even with the best UPS?
For a direct or extremely close lightning strike, the sheer magnitude of the energy involved can overwhelm almost any consumer-grade protection. We're talking millions of volts and tens of thousands of amps. A UPS or surge protector might mitigate some of it, but significant damage is highly probable. The goal of a good power protection strategy isn't to be impervious to an act of God, but to safeguard against the far more common, less dramatic, but still damaging events. Those are the ones that quietly degrade your equipment.
So, it's about protecting against the 99% of less dramatic issues that slowly kill your tech, rather than the 1% catastrophic strike.
Exactly, and the less dramatic surges can still be quite powerful. Think of an inductive load, like a large motor in an HVAC system on the same circuit switching on or off. That can create localized voltage spikes that are still damaging over time. These are the nuances a truly robust UPS with power conditioning addresses.
And we've got Jim on the line. Hey Jim, what's on your mind?
Yeah, this is Jim from Ohio. You two are just making a mountain out of a molehill, I tell ya. Power quality, power conditioning. Back in my day, we just plugged things into the wall and they worked. Never had all these fancy gizmos. It's just another way for these companies to sell you more expensive stuff you don't really need. My neighbor Gary, he bought one of those smart thermostats last year, and now his furnace breaks down every other month. Used to work just fine with the old dial.
Well, Jim, with respect, the complexity and sensitivity of modern electronics are vastly different from, say, a TV or a radio from decades ago. A modern desktop computer, especially one with a dedicated GPU for AI work like Daniel's, has extremely tight tolerances for stable power.
And to address your point about fancy gizmos, Jim, the internal components of today's devices are built with miniaturized circuits that are highly susceptible to even small voltage fluctuations. It's not about selling you more, it's about adapting to the evolving nature of technology. Plus, the grid itself is aging in many places, which only exacerbates these issues. And, my dog chewed through the power cord of my old lamp last week. Now that was an actual power problem.
I don't buy it. Sounds like an excuse to me. My cat, Whiskers, he just sits on my monitor and it doesn't break. You just gotta have good, solid equipment, not all this high-tech fragile nonsense. And what about the weather? It's supposed to rain all week here in Ohio. Gonna be a real mess for my garden. But anyway, you guys are just overthinking it.
We appreciate the perspective, Jim. But I think for anyone with a significant investment in their computer, protecting it from these often invisible threats is just good practice. Thanks for calling in, Jim.
Yeah, whatever.
So, Herman, for listeners who are now realizing their expensive setup might be slowly deteriorating from bad power, what are the key takeaways? What should they look for if they're in a situation like Daniel's?
Good question, Corn. First, assess your needs. If you simply want temporary backup for short outages and basic surge protection, a line interactive UPS is often sufficient and more affordable. However, if you have very sensitive equipment, live in an area with notoriously unstable power, or are concerned about power conditioning and protection from those frequent restoration surges, an online or double conversion, UPS is worth the investment.
So, it's not just about how many watts it can supply, but also the type of protection it offers.
Exactly. Also, pay attention to the VA, volt ampere rating, and the watt rating. Ensure your UPS can handle the maximum power draw of all connected devices with some headroom. Don't make Daniel's mistake of undersizing it. Read reviews, especially those that mention power conditioning capabilities. And don't forget the warranty. A good UPS manufacturer will often offer connected equipment warranties.
And for those in rentals, where they can't upgrade their wiring.
For rentals, a quality online UPS is almost a necessity. It gives you a clean power environment independent of the building's internal wiring imperfections. It acts as your personal, highly regulated mini-grid. You're bringing power quality control directly into your workspace.
This has been a super eye-opening discussion, Herman. I think I'm looking at my power outlets with a lot more suspicion now. It's like a secret battle happening inside the walls that we don't even know about.
Indeed. The electricity that powers our lives is rarely as clean or as stable as we assume. Understanding these nuances is crucial for preserving our increasingly reliant digital lives.
Absolutely. And it's all thanks to the weird prompt from our producer that got us thinking about this. If you want to keep exploring the weird and wonderful world of prompts with us, you can find My Weird Prompts on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts.
Join us next time for another deep dive into the unexpected.
Until then, stay charged, but also stay conditioned.
And check your power quality.
You know it. Thanks for listening to another episode of My Weird Prompts, an AI-generated podcast featuring Daniel Rosehill's AI prompts as answered by a revolving cast of friendly AI characters including me, Cornelius the Sloth. Subscribe on Spotify or visit myweirdprompts.com.